Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, brought to you by Shared Services Link and sponsored by Basware. Today, we are going to be looking at the best defense against AP crime with 6 proven measures. My name is Sarah Fain, and I am the head of content here at Shared Services Link. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Tom Santacote, the Global VP, AP Assurance at Basware. You, of course, have a very important role in today's webinar as well, and that is just to make sure that you get the absolute most out of this hour. Tom and I here are with you live, and we ask that you just make the most of it by bringing your questions to the table. You can set the best way to send us your questions is usually over on the right-hand side of your screen in the GoToWebinar panel. If you type us your questions, we'll take them in about the last 10 minutes of the webinar. Just to preempt some of the most commonly asked questions, yes, the recording will be available again on our site and at basware.com, and the slides will be available as well, and you'll receive those shortly after the webinar. If you like what you hear today, we always enjoy you spreading the word, sharing on LinkedIn, and just getting in touch with us afterwards. We really do like to hear from you. So let's just touch briefly on why we're here today and what we're going to be talking about. One trend that we've noticed and been hearing about is that AP crime and AP fraud is escalating, and escalating in a way we couldn't quite put our finger on. There have been other surveys around it, but we wanted to ask our audience specifically about AP crime and fraud. In our survey, we surveyed about 100 finance and shared services professionals globally, and we found that nearly 70% of our audience were victims of AP crime in the last year. So we want to understand, well, one, what's behind this and what can we start doing about it? Some of the things that came up in our survey we're going to be diving into is the rise of Gen AI and how that's enabling fraudsters, and also how shared services are scaling at a pace and how the new larger volumes moving into new markets are putting AP teams at risk. So if this is a topic that resonates with you, you are in the right place. So first of all, Tom, I want to bring you in to talk a little bit more about what we actually mean by AP fraud and some of the fraud that we actually are seeing in the market today.
Sure, and good morning, everybody. Good to see you, Sarah. So as your slide here, we're going to talk about 4 different types of fraud that we typically see. First one being maybe internal fraud, and that's usually managed 100% from the inside. You hear of embezzlement cases, you hear falsifying expense reports, record manipulation. So that type of fraud is 100% inside. But then you have external fraud, and that's fraud that you can't control. It could be orchestrated by multi-parties or just one party, and it's driven out from outside of the workplace. Collaborative, you see quite often. That's where you have somebody from the inside and the outside that work together and collude to take advantage of process gaps and segregation of duty gaps to be able to collaborate, to be able to allow kickbacks, allow duplicate payments to go through, to create a falsified invoice. It really is getting data from somebody that has information of the company on the inside and sharing it with an outside person. The last person is non-malicious fraud, which you could some say that it's not really fraud in itself. It wasn't done intentionally, but it does happen. And the leading cause of this is the sheer volume of transactions. This volume of lots of transactions coupled with manual and paper-based processes increase the error rate dramatically. And that is an area of gaps and where you get overpayments made and payments to the wrong vendor and so forth. So those are the 4 types of fraud as I've seen it over the years, and we still see it today.
Thank you. So I think it's a lot to take in. And again, we want to invite people on the line today as well. If you want to, share any experiences, we obviously won't name your company, but if it helps add a little bit of color to today, please put us in the questions or even a comment that we can share with the group. So thank you so much, Tom.
And Sarah, before you go on, I got to make one comment. One comment here is that fake vendors and invoice fraud top the list of the 2 types of fraud being committed in 2024 from the survey that we had taken here. 47% said vendor fraud, and bad actors, imposters was number 1, and invoice fraud was 35%. That would be just submitting bad invoices, fake invoices, and allowing them to go through. So those are the two areas that we're seeing most importantly there. I thought I would add that.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you. I think it paints a good picture of what we're up against. When we asked our survey respondents about what was their experience with fraud or attempted fraud in 2024, this is what we found. 32% fortunately had any fraud attempts that they knew of in 2024. 49% said there were some attempts they were managed, and 19% experienced multiple incidents of fraud in 2024. So looking at that 19 and 49%, that's 68% of organizations with at least one known attempt of fraud in 2024. So I want to just see if that aligns with what you're seeing as well in the market.
So what I find interesting is that 68% acknowledging fraud and 19% with multiple. So that's, 19% of them have multiple. So I focus more on that 32% is what I find interesting. So were they really immune, or did they just not notice it? So what are the potential issues? What happened? Did they not report it? Underreporting. They may have missed it or chose not to report it. Lack of internal controls. Do they not have the tools to trap fraud, identify it, and mitigate it? Resources. Do those organizations not have the resources to keep an eye and look for fraudulent activities? Or there's the opportunity that was highly sophisticated fraud attempts, and they were sophisticated and went through, and they weren't noticed at all. And then it could be the case of no fraud committed, but I'm going to call that into question because with 68% are saying, hey, we had some fraud. So there are reasons why here, but we look at that. I think what's most important factor here is that 68% are saying, yeah, we see it. So it's very real.
Absolutely. And we want to just get in touch with people on the line today because we have not heard from you yet. So do you think that your organization's exposure to AP risk or fraud is getting worse? Has it increased in the last 12 to 24 months? Would you say that you haven't noticed an increase? Would you say that you've noticed a moderate increase? Or would you say that you've noticed a significant increase? We are going to be sharing these results and comparing to what we found, so I'm always interested in hearing. So love to see lots of you voting. And I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1, and the results will be coming up on your screen now. So here we can see that 31% of you say you haven't noticed an increase, 42% have seen a moderate increase, and 27% have seen a significant increase. And it's very interesting that actually that responds very closely to our survey results, where we found 38% of our organizations hadn't noticed any increase, 45% noticed a moderate increase, and 17% noticed a significant increase. And if you put those, that 17 and 45%, that's 62% of organizations who think it's getting worse. So Tom, I'd like to start getting your insights on whether you're feeling that as well, whether more people are coming to you with concerns about fraud.
Yes, happy to comment on that, Sarah. So I will comment on what you just said. The data is very much aligned. Roughly the same percentages of people who had experienced fraud are saying it's getting worse, and the people who said that they haven't seen any fraud are about the same amounts that are saying that it's not getting worse. So again, that brings me back to my earlier comments. Why is that small segment saying, and that 38% segment saying, and they're not noticing an increase? Is it because they just don't have the resources and the controls and the processes to identify, isolate, and mitigate? Are they choosing to underreport intentionally? Or are these fraud attempts really getting to be more successful? And that 38% are actually seeing fraud is getting through and it's not being trapped. So let's dig into this a little bit deeper here. What are the two types of factors that are causing this to happen? So you have internal and external. Internal factors are going to be lack or weak controls, processes that the organizations have not set up collaboratively across teams to really track and isolate and mitigate fraud. Increased transaction volume. As these companies experience more and more transactions, the resources are doing all they can to process invoices and get the invoices approved and paid on time, versus to be able to then start looking at them in a deeper way to look for fraud issues. tightly integrated AP automation processes. I'm going to get into this in more detail in a bit, but there's an area to talk to there about why we have potential fraud and gaps. And lastly, internal factors is paper, paper, and paper. When you have paper in your processes, it's going to create vulnerabilities because it's manual. External factors, Gen AI is here. We're seeing it all over the place. It's just not news stories anymore. As acknowledged by the people on this in their survey, 68% are seeing it, so it's real. So the evolving threat landscape and new and sophisticated cyber attacks will expose businesses to even greater risk. From a personal note, fraud is on the minds of every CFO, and much is being done at this point in time. But still, companies are not prepared to address fraud in a comprehensive manner at the speed and scale that's going to be required in the world that we live in today.
I think that's really interesting insight about both the external and external factors. And in our survey, we actually asked our respondents as well about, well, what do you think is driving the increase in fraud today? And again, in these options, you'll see it's really a combination, I suppose, of both internal, external, but also, technical and operational changes that are making fraud both easier to attempt and harder to detect for organizations. So in our survey, 62% of people said that Gen AI was making fraud attempts more convincing. And it's interesting that actually that's twice as much as any other option there. So it does almost dwarf the responses below. So it's a really serious and growing threat to organizations. 29% of people cited an increase in transaction volume. 28% said it was lack of AP automation or legacy systems. 25% of people said it was remote work and decentralized operations, increasing their risk. And the same number of people cited an expansion of their supplier base. 18% of people said that it was they didn't have a robust enough approach to vet suppliers. 18% said they entering new markets raised their risk. 15% said it was a lack of updated fraud prevention training, and 9% of people cited inadequate security measures. So it'd be good to just see your take on how this data compares to your experience as well.
Sure, thank you. Good data points here. So some thoughts that I see here. One of them is the increase in transaction volume. Let's note here that businesses can conduct thousands of transactions every day. It's not uncommon for me to see customers with 500,000 to 1 million invoices per year. The volume of transactions is going to create gaps because the resources just aren't there to manage every invoice. Now, let's take into account a high majority of the invoices are going to be perfectly fine and accurate. In fact, data suggests that it's 99.5% of invoices will be just fine. That's 1/2 of 1%. But it's just going to be those outliers that we're going to need to protect against. Gen AI doesn't surprise me that it's at 62%, so we're not even going to talk about that. What I will say here is that with the rise of Gen AI, companies are going to have to arm themselves with tools that are going to be able to combat it. Manual efforts aren't going to cut it anymore, right? So we've got ever increasing levels of sophistications of Gen AI, and companies are going to need to arm themselves with tools to be able to combat that. These categories here, many of the companies that I've talked to address many of these categories, but rarely all of them with the necessary precision and execution that's going to be required to trap them. So this is going to create vulnerabilities across all of these. So some of them are addressed and some are, they just don't have the resources to address it. So I think these are all important areas that our people on this whole call here should pay attention to. So every area needs to be addressed and every door needs to be closed. It only takes one transaction to make a big impact on a company and make the news cycle.
That's really great points there. And so again, if people on the line today have any comments or color you want to add to this, please feel free to put your questions in the comment box. Because we want to hear from you again, and we want to understand. We understand AP professionals are often, on the front lines of dealing with fraud, but you also have a host of other challenges. So what challenges, do you face in accounts payable? I appreciate this won't capture everything, but do you struggle with maybe just keeping up with the fraud tactics today? Do you struggle with a high volume of queries? Do you find yourself with, multiple systems? It leads to fragmentation, poor visibility. Do you have high level of manual processes? Or is poor data quality an issue for you? I appreciate there might be more than one here, but all of these can end up, making it fraud a harder battle to fight. So thank you so much, everybody voting today. Lots of responses. I'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1, and the results will be coming up on your screen now. So really, responses all over here. Everything is about a third or more. 59% of you cite high level of manual processes, 43% cite high volume of queries, 41% keeping up with the fraud tactics, 32% cite system fragmentation and poor data quality. So let's compare that to our survey respondents. And again, in our survey respondents, we found people, again, struggling with issues across the board. Again, 34% of people struggling with fraud tactics, 29% high vendor queries, 27% multiple system fragmentation. Again, getting down the list, it's being understaffed, a lack of resource, reliance on paper-based processes, inaccurate data, unable to perform statement reconciliation at scale. And towards the bottom of the list at 19, 18, and 7, it's delays with misrouted invoices, difficult tracking due to duplicate payments, and unlimited visibility into cash flow and financial status. So I think to me, this shows that when AP teams have so much on their plate, that fraud detection can't always be a priority. So I'd like to hear from you, Tom, about how you see this play out as well.
Well, thanks, Sarah. I love the insights from your survey and what the people out in the audience have shared here. These challenges are often voiced by our customers that Basware works with today. But I want to dive in on one area that I particularly have seen a lot, and that's multiple systems. Multiple systems could be multiple ERPs or multiple systems that comprise the AP automation platforms. From my experience, when customers come to Basware and looking for transformation of the AP, I see them sunsetting multiple solutions that comprise the current AP landscape. So what I mean by that is that customers will have solutions for capture and extraction of invoice data. They'll have solutions for workflow, approval, matching. They'll have regionalized multi-point solutions to handle a global invoice compliance mandates. So like working with 5 different vendors in different parts of the world, all to handle those unique invoicing requirements. They'll have solutions for payment processing. And they'll have additional solutions for KPI reporting to the C-suite. So hosting all these solutions on a single platform is certainly going to drive efficiencies and save costs. That's a given. But as a byproduct, it's going to reduce process gaps between every one of those different tools and applications I just mentioned. And by eliminating those process gaps and putting those discrete solutions and putting them onto one single platform, you're going to reduce exposure to fraud. As you look at the challenges all these survey respondents face, there are all potential vulnerabilities. But this, coupled with the resource prioritization issues, resource constraints, and the rise of Gen AI against AP fraud is really making for a perfect storm.
No, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. And I think maybe hopefully in the line people might be understanding kind of why this is really growing, and that things are both harder to detect, easier to happen, and AP is really just overwhelmed a lot of the time. So when it comes to actually managing fraud, and we've talked about accounts payable struggling a bit, but we wanted to understand who is actually managing fraud prevention in your organization's department. So who is responsible for fighting AP fraud? Our survey found that AP team members, as part of their broader responsibilities, 38% of people said they were primarily responsible for AP fraud. So a team that is generally probably overstretched as is has to do it on top of their daily responsibilities. 37% of people said they do have cross-departmental collaboration, so the responsibility to fight fraud is across maybe IT, legal, finance as well. 10% of people said they had a dedicated fraud prevention team. 10% said there was no dedicated management of fraud prevention. 4% lean on their internal audit team, and just 2% said that they rely on external consultants or third-party vendors. So it is not a dedicated function for most organizations. And I think to me, this really just highlights the need for organizations to really start looking at those specialized resources as well. So I'd like to get your feedback on this.
Okay, thank you. So this concerns me, right? So if it's not dedicated as an AP function, where is it dedicated, right? So the question comes to mind, is AP really the best spot for this? Are they the right resources? Is it fair to assign it to them? AP organizations, I spoke before, really tend to struggle with processing invoices, getting approvals, and getting suppliers paid on time. Now, is it fair to add this whole strategic initiative of fraud mitigation to them, right? And if we look at 38% of respondents have indicated that fraud prevention has now been included in their remit. So I see this as a gap. Are they really given the resources? That's fine for it to be in the remit, but are we going to resource them appropriately? Or is it just going to be another task that takes a back seat to getting invoices approved and paid? Really like seeing the 37% cross-departmental collaboration. I think that's really what it's going to take. It's going to take a village, but I question how that will impact their primary responsibilities. These other departments have different roles in life, right? And their priorities are going to be somewhere else. Now you're going to make a cross-departmental team to focus on it. Will that still take a backseat to what they have to do every day? So that's an observation there. Regarding a fraud prevention team, I would expect to see that much higher if we were to take the same sort of way a year from now, because these organizations are moving from exiting their planning and entering their execution phase. And I think in order to execute properly, they're going to have to put these fraud prevention teams in place to have a sole focus on this.
I think it's a really important point that you've jumped in here, and whether AP is really best place to be tackling this in the first place with so many other obligations on their plate. So we don't want to just harp on the challenges. We want to start zooming in on what people are actually doing to fight fraud. So first of all, we wanted to understand in our survey about what fraud measures organizations currently have in place. So our survey respondents said 79% are using segregation of duties across teams, 75% cite vendor verification and background checks, 67% do manual audits and reviews, 59% use of secure payment channels, 53% regular staff training, fraud prevention, 31% on automated fraud detection tools, and just 20% reliance on third-party solutions. So to me, really, this starts to show that these lean heavily towards manual effort, and the tools are in the minority. So just want to get your take on that, Tom, as well.
Sure. So these measures I look at, many of them are manual processes. They're not efficient and not scalable. And that's what is the answer. So we'll cover that in another slide because I want to get into what some of the solutions are. But looking at these things, if I was doing the same discussion with you 10 years ago, Sarah, which we may have, I think what we have seen here is that these are fraud mitigation processes that have been considered best practices forever. For a long time, they're standard. While valuable, they weren't designed for the rise of Gen AI, right? These manual processes weren't designed to be able to fight at the scale which Gen AI is going to fight back. So in today's evolving landscape, with the weaponization of Gen AI, fraud against AP, the traditional security measures are going to require adaptation and reinforcement to be able to actually confront the fight that they have in front of them. I think companies need to embrace technology and advancements that are available in the marketplace to fortify against the growing sophistication of Gen AI, meaning they need to be able to even the battle. Manual processes aren't going to be able to handle the fight against Gen AI. The speed at which AI-powered fraud can be committed is no longer a match for these processes, right? These are manual processes. Gen AI and AI fraud is going to be much faster with repeated attempts. So I think the audience knows that there are platforms available that will provide robust AP automation that I talked to in the past, eliminating those process gaps in between those different solutions that comprise an AP landscape. And those platforms also offer tools to detect and stop fraud attacks in their place.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more about the tools. But first, want to just again touch base with our audience and understand which of the measures you have in place as well. is leaning on segregation of duties. Again, you can pick more than one here: vendor verification, manual audits, regular training, automated fraud detection tools. So again, love to see lots of you voting, and I will be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1, and those will be coming up on your screen. And again, that really does tie in with what we found as well. It's segregation of duties and verification being the top two. And again, fraud, manual audits, regular training earn 44%, and fraud detection tools, again, at the bottom. So let me just, what I want to do now is just recap. I know on these presentations, when we share a lot of data, it can be a lot to take in. So I just want to share, as a quick recap, the data points that we addressed today. So in our survey, we found that 68% of organizations encountered at least one fraud attempt in 2024. And 62% say that the attempts have gotten worse in the last year. One thing we didn't actually do a chart on, but if you zoomed in a bit more on the people really suffering with fraud, 90% of them say it's getting worse. And both technical and operational aspects are making both fraud easier to attempt for the criminals and harder to detect for finance organizations. And while AP teams are often on the front line of managing payments and spotting fraud, we're often seeing a bit of a firefighting reactive culture, which makes fraud not always at the top of the priority list. So having an integrated approach to fraud was common, but only 10% they actually had a dedicated fraud prevention team for their AP department. And just fewer than a third of AP departments use automated fraud detection tools to identify and prevent fraud. So I think, to me, this just shows that there is a real problem out there, and, modern, the existing tools might not quite be up to the task today. And just want to get your thoughts on this, Tom, as well.
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. So I'll comment just on a few. The first one is the most important. 68% have encountered. Okay, so this is real. Everybody stand up and take notice, right? If it's happening to 68%, odds are it's going to be happening in your organization. So please take notice and make sure your organization is aware of this and start to make it a plan to enact a plan to address this. The second one is about the remit of AP. If fraud prevention doesn't end up in the remit, if it does end up in the remit of AP, then it has to be resourced appropriately. AP, the organizations that I talk to cannot, they're doing everything they can do to process and pay invoices. Fraud is serious. This is a whole different initiative. So I'm not going to comment on where it should be, but wherever it goes, it needs to be resourced, and they need to have the tools to be able to fight against it. Lastly, 31% I'm seeing here leverage technology to support their mitigation strategies. I really expect this is going to change. There are a lot of customers in market today that I'm talking to that are realizing that they can't fight against the Gen AI threats that they're seeing today with the age-old approaches that they're doing, the manual approaches that have been around for years to mitigate fraud, such as segregation of duties, vendor master files reviews, as we talked about earlier. So technology is something that I'm hearing more and more. Customers are in market because they realize they need to be armed effectively to fight against these issues.
Thank you, Tom. And I know the title of our webinar today had 6 proven measures, so we do want to make sure that we deliver on that. So, Tom, can you talk us through a bit of an action plan about what people can be really doing to address AP crime?
Okay. Sure. The first one is embrace automation. I talked about this in detail. Strive for straight through invoice processing, zero touch. Eliminate process gaps in your AP landscape, your technology stack, and eliminate paper and any other off-system processing as much as possible. You want to get as many invoices going through the same technology and the same AP stack, because that way you can tune that stack, consistently refine it, and it will protect against fraud across all those invoices that go through that system. I see too many customers with different platforms and different processes for different types of invoices. So that's the first recommendation. The second one is adopt AP AI-powered detection. Okay, technology is available, customers are in market, and they're seeing real benefits. And the benefits are undeniable because they're quantified. You know what I mean? We have customers that will, we will show them on a daily basis the number of invoices that have been trapped because of potential fraud. You can't argue with the numbers. The third one is cross-functional fraud prevention teams. I think this is great. It takes a village. No one person's point of view is going to catch it all, but it's that collaboration is really what makes it happen. And I think that village just needs to have the right tools to be able to be effective and support their objectives. Okay, as I talked about earlier, that village needs to be prioritized for this one job and not having to be that task that they never get to. So that's important. The fourth one, vigilance and education. I liken this to the HR training that we're required to take at most companies every year. The compliance training and so forth. It's the same thing with fraud. It's not like you're going to launch one initiative and do one thing and it's all better and you move on. It's an ongoing, continuous education of our employees, in different processes, so they're aware of it. And it's going to change. Every few months, there's going to be new threats. So it is not you do it one time and that's it and you're over. This is a continuous process. Fifth one, seek help. Don't be hard on yourself. You know what I mean? This is a very evolving landscape that we're right in there, and no company is going to have the expertise in-house to be able to address it. So don't be shy. There are plenty of good companies out there that can provide consulting and give you points of view that you don't have. And I strongly recommend that. The sixth one is prioritize data quality. Data is everything. I hear about new vendors, the first couple of points of view here. Vet new vendors thoroughly. Okay, and vacant bag, talked earlier about imposters, vendor imposters, bad actors were the #1 cause of fraud. So how are you vetting them? Are you actually getting an online survey, filling out a form, or are you talking to them? Are you doing research? So that's very, very important. The other thing I always advise my customers, take a look at your master vendor file. Time and time again, I'll look at customers that will have 4,000 to 8,000 suppliers in their master vendor file, and they've only done transactions with 1,500 in the last 16 months, 18 months. All right, so I'm not going to tell you how to manage your vendor file, but you need to. Those are areas that provide immense amount of risk. Of all of a sudden, you've got stale vendors now, invoices start coming through from those suppliers. So that's what I would recommend everybody start, and from here. Next.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think.
Well, I got one more.
Oh, one more. Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you a 7 here. Bonus one here is timely statement reviews. And the reason why that is important, it won't stop fraud, but it'll help you mitigate it or recover it very quickly, right? If a supplier keeps calling saying that they haven't been paid by reconciling statements, you'll be able to determine if they truly haven't been paid or if they've been paid twice and so forth. So by doing that, you're going to be able to mitigate the consequences very quickly thereafter.
No, that's a good point. I think an often overlooked one as well. So thanks for that. And I think really what I've learned from doing this survey, and we're working with the team at Basware to analyze it and give you some step forward, is that the fraud tactics are absolutely getting more sophisticated, and it is just a wave after wave coming after at AP departments. And legacy and technology and traditional tools really just might not be enough to fight this growing and increasingly sophisticated threat. So looking to invest in advanced technologies and external expertise is becoming increasingly necessary just to stay ahead of the fraud events that we're seeing happening every day in accounts payable departments. So I'd love to hear from you, Tom, about some practical things about what how Basware, how you help your customers address this issue.
Sure. Well, Basware, is a leading provider in AP first strategy. This is what we do. This is what we do very well in all we do. And we can see here this is our overall platform. I won't get into a ton of detail here, but it gives you a visual. But I want to highlight the box in red. Box in red is our AP Assurance Suite, which I manage the line of business for. And it consists of solutions to help mitigate fraud that we've talked about today. We've listened to our customers. We provide value to the office of the CFO, and over the last few years, they've said one thing all the time: they're concerned about fraud. So Basware has answered the mail. made investments in some companies, and now have integrated it into our overall stack. So when those invoices come in into our network and are received, when they're matched during the automation phase and before that they're paid, or while they're being processed, they are stopped and they are flagged if they don't meet the requirements. So our solution consists of AP Protect, which is provides you information about your invoices, whether they're erroneous vendors, whether they're duplicate vendors. It'll give you information in your vendor master file. It'll identify potential fraud risk across your platform. It'll give you information on payment terms, a wide variety of solutions. We have another solution that provides you the ability to match statements at scale. You can take a process that would take a person hours and bring it down to minutes. And then again, as I said before, by doing timely statement reconciliations, you're going to be able to identify, quickly see where payments and invoices didn't match up, and you have something to research. So that is the solution that Basware is bringing to market today. But this is just a small part of overall what Basware brings to our customers. We're number one in the world of AP automation. We've been around 40 years at Basware, and we process about $800 billion of spend on an annual basis across 175 different countries. Large volume of invoices, and this is what we do. We focus on this, and many customers have turned to Basware year after year to provide a holistic single platform from everything from invoice sending and receiving to workflow and processing down to the payment. And when we see now, we add into this stack here, we've added AP assurance to solidify and bolster the integrity of that overall financial transaction.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. So I've just really enjoyed working on this research with you. I think I've learned a lot, and I always do when I speak to you and the team at Basware. So thank you so much. And I just want to again ask anybody on the line if they have questions, please do submit it in the chat. And what I'm just going to do as well, and just put a little bit of a poll up to see if you want a specific type of follow-up, you can just let us know whether you want to, a call with an expert, someone like Tom, maybe if you want to demo the technology or more information. So I'll just keep it up as we go through the first question here. So also one thing, we did get some very thoughtful questions in the lead up to the webinar. If they are a bit too specific to your organization, we probably won't put them on the webinar now, but do feel free to submit them to us if you just want to be asked privately as well. We can get back to you, not on the with everybody else on the line as well. Asking about the most common types of fraud. I know, Tom, you mentioned some stats in the beginning as well. Could you just help recap about what some of the most common threats are? Again, I think you mentioned that quite early on in the presentation.
Yeah, so again, I did some research in preparation for this, and over the last few years, data suggests it's bad actors or people impersonating as vendors is the number one, followed very closely by fake invoices. These are spoofed invoices where especially, this is why I get away from the paper. When you're on paper, the likelihood of these spoofs are going to be far greater if you have an automated platform. So these invoices may emulate a supplier name that you may be familiar with. It may emulate other information that people are comfortable, or if those invoices that don't get paid, they get sent in again and again and again, and eventually, or to a different location. Eventually, somebody's going to pay it. So that's where the two areas we see most. And then you see a lot of things like invoice numbers that are misread by technology. Where you've got scanning issues. Companies that use OCR also can be very subject to this fraud because OCR isn't perfect, and it may pick up an 8 as a 6 or a 0 as an O, and things like that will also contribute to opportunities for overpayments to suppliers.
That's great. And another question's come in about the support that what support Basware is able to do for maybe erroneous or duplicate payments.
Yeah, we have a wide variety of algorithms that will look at the different types of invoices, whether it's just looking at the numbers and the invoice, the vendor name, the amount, the invoice date, to all sorts of permutations of the invoice numbers. Where you're using fuzzy logic, we're able to determine that if the If the invoice date has been altered, if the banking information has been altered. So there's a much detail that we do to be able to identify potential duplicate payments far beyond the standard 3-4 way field actions that most P2P suppliers out there, SAP, Ariba, Coupa, and all the other AP processing, they all do basic duplicate payment checking. In fact, it's table stakes. They have to offer it, but it's so fundamental, and it was designed and put in place well before the threats that we're seeing today of Gen AI. So if this is a concern, you should really look into looking at solutions that can really combat, multiple different permutations of data.
So could you help just expand on that a little bit? I mean, I think lots of people will look for, the big players like you mentioned, but maybe what are some of the questions people can ask to make sure that they're getting a solution that will really effectively help them fight fraud?
I would, that's great. So I would ask things like, tell us about your technology, how long it's been in the marketplace, and the evolution. That's important. Talk about the customers and validate data points of how much the solutions be able to trap or save these customers over the years. And then I would talk about the amount of algorithms and the science behind it. I've had many customers saying, well, we do this data trapping ourselves. We have our own algorithms, yet we go in and do some A/B testing, and the results are phenomenal. Okay, because again, we're a bespoke solution here. This AP assurance platform is built just for this. It is just not a general 3-4 way of field matching to be able to prevent potential duplicates. So if you think, I would say, if you think you have something in place, but yet you still see duplicate payments, checks coming back, calls from suppliers, then maybe it's time for a discussion that we could have about how we could do a little proof of concept to help you better understand the real opportunity.
Thank you, Tom. Another topic that I know we didn't really dive into in the data, it was there, and you gave it as a bonus 7th option today. But could you just expand a little bit on the supplier statement reconciliation and kind of why it's important? I know it's kind of often overlooked. Maybe give some like success stories or something about why it's really important and what people can benefit from if they actually do it and kind of take it seriously.
It's so important. As I talk to my customers, I say, do you customers reconcile supplier statements? And some will say if they come in. Some will say never, we don't have the people to do it. Some people say, yeah, the top 20%. It's a hard effort. It's detailed. You're looking at hundreds of line items and having a human look at them and compare them. By having a solution in place that will actually just highlight differences and expose areas that you need to research, can save 10 times the time to be able to process these statements. So that's the value of it. Now, why is it important for fraud? If a supplier is sending you 3 or 4 of the same invoices, saying we haven't been paid, by reconciling them, you'll be able to see this invoice was sent 4 times and we paid it the first time and we're not paying the next 4 times. Or, so that's, by being on top of your environment like that, you're going to be able to mitigate it or actually quickly recover it if fraud was committed.
Thank you. So just again, if you did ask some questions that were a bit specific to your organization, I have asked the team at Basware to respond afterwards. We are kind of nearing our end of questions here. So I've got for one more, unless we get a few more coming in. Tom, you talked about multiple systems and fragmentation leading to the rise of risk of fraud. But when people have multiple ERPs, can Basware support help companies who still have can't change over ERPs at the moment, but still want to help reduce the levels of fraud risk?
Yeah, no, that's great. So we see multiple ERPs all the time. The large companies acquire and continue have it fully integrated, and they're running distinct instances of their ERPs. But it's important, as much as possible, to consolidate AP processing into one spot. And the point I was trying to make is that in these landscapes that I'm seeing today is that there's multiple solutions. You've got some off-system solutions, you've got a lot of paper, then you've got scanning, you've got people keying in invoices, you've got workflow, you've got compliance issues that are off-system for global mandates. The more of that can be consolidated onto one platform, you're going to tighten up any of the gaps between those processes and that will be a very good line of prevention against fraud. Can't say it's going to get it all, but it's going to be so much better than you have one spot to put the controls in place where every invoice is going to go through. And we can process invoices against for all ERPs from on the front end. So all the invoices would come into the Basware system to do all that processing on one stack that I talked about before submitting it up to the ERP for payment.
Thank you very much, Tom. So I just want to just say a big thank you to the team at Basware. You've been absolutely great to work with on this. And again, a huge thank you to everybody on the webinar today, especially if you were one of our survey respondents as well. I would like to give you a big double thank you. We do love to hear from you. If you want to just give us some feedback, we'd love to know what you thought about the webinar today as well. So I'll just put this up for a moment. If you have your phone on you, and just to let you know as well, we have captured all the information from this report and some of the analysis as well, and you'll see you might recognize this banner, and you will get a copy of that in the follow-up. So I just want to say again a big thank you, everybody, the teams behind the webinar today, everybody on the line today. Thank you for all your thoughtful questions and responses. We'd love to see you in the polls, even if we can't see you in person. So thanks, Tom, again, for a really great session. I always learn a lot, and we look forward to welcoming you next time.
And thank you, Sarah, and the Shared Services Link for supporting this.
Oh, pleasure. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Goodbye.